Hi there, and welcome to another video at the Learn to Code Academy. My name is Williams Teddy Jimmo, and in this video, I'm going to be running through how to create from scratch a DLL file, a dynamic link library file. Now, firstly, what is a DLL file? What a DLL file is, it is a piece of code that allows multiple programs to communicate with that piece of code at any given time. For example, if you're a music producer, you might be familiar already with a DLL file when you install your plugins. It's a specialized piece of code which has a set piece of logic which you plug into a program. And once you do, you have access to that functionality from this discrete piece of code. It's very useful and it's used a lot in a professional environment, in the industry, in practice, in terms of coding, and it's always worthwhile as a software developer to know how to do this. So it might seem daunting at first, it might seem a little bit intimidating, the thought of creating a DLL, but I assure you it's actually very, very simple with Visual Studio. And so yeah, without much further ado, let's get straight into the walkthrough. So what you want to first do is boot up Visual Studio. I've already got mine open, and this is actually my DLL file. If you're interested in or curious about what I'm doing here, what the point is of this pseudo C# as it's called, as I've named, I'll leave a link in the description, because this is part of another project, which is my custom IDE project. But I don't want to talk too much about that in this video. I'll just leave the link and feel free to check it out. Otherwise, yes, what you want to do, boot up Visual Studio, and then click New and Project. Now, when the new project window comes up, what you want to do is go to Windows Desktop, as it's shown here, and go to Class Library.NET Framework. Now, give the credentials appropriate values. So, for example, here you can give a name to your library. You can save it in a particular directory. I'm not going to go ahead and press OK because I've already created my library. But for you, if you haven't done so already, hit OK once you're happy with all the details. I'm going to go ahead and click Cancel. And you have an empty file. Now, what you do now, you can fill out your file with the logic you need for your program. In this case, I have a list, and this list contains three simple strings: string, int, and void. And yeah, so basically, with these strings, they can be accessed at runtime with my main program. So once you're happy with the logic in your DLL file, what you want to do first is to save. You can't actually see the save icon right now, it's actually off screen, but just hit Save All, and then what you want to do is to build your solution. So I'm going ahead and I'm building my solution right now. You just hit Build and then Build Solution. Once that's done, what you want to do now is, if you haven't done so already, create your main project. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my example application, which is just a console application. And this is it. So what you want to do is create your, it could be maybe a WPF application, a WinForms, a console app like this example. And what you want to do, the next step, is to go into the directory of your DLL, your class library file. I'll just run through it quickly so that you can see what's going on. So in my case, I'm sudo C#, you're going to see these files here, and then you click sudo C#, the folder, which is the same name as your project name. Then click bin, click debug, net standard 2.0, and what you're going to see is a couple files here, a few files. You want to go ahead and copy the DLL file, okay, the DLL file, and I'm going to explain why I'm doing this in a little bit. So go ahead, grab this, the name of your project, .dll, and once you've done that, copy it and paste it into the same directory but into your main project. So for example here, it will be example app, bin, debug, and then after that it will be, just leave it anywhere here in the debug folder. You can just leave it here, paste it in. Now, once you've done that, you'll be able to leave a reference. Oh, before that actually, excuse me, I'm going ahead of myself. Click Project, Add Reference. Now, what you want to do is hit Browse, and then browse for your directory and look for the area that you stored your DLL file, that you pasted it into. So in my case, it will be in the debug folder of my main project, and it will be the same for you. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because you don't actually need to reference your DLL folder from your bin folder, but I believe that having your DLL file in your working directory is better for your program than if you say just have a DLL file sitting in my documents. It keeps everything together, and once it comes to deployment of your application, you're not going to have problems finding your dependencies. They're all going to be there. So go ahead and do that, and you're going to see your DLL file over here. You're going to see it in the list. So go ahead and click it, and then click OK. I'm just going to click cancel because I've already done this. And once you've done that, it will allow you to add the namespace in your program. And that's your DLL file, essentially. That's the reference to your DLL file. So I'm just going to demonstrate this, extracting the logic, utilizing the logic of my DLL file. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to declare a class from my library. So I'm going to go ahead and write sudo CSharp, which one do I want? Primitive data types. Data types equals new, and I'll go ahead and, I don't really need to do this, I can as well though. Primitive data types. I could just reference data types straight away, but it's okay. So I've gone ahead and referenced my primitive data types class, which is in my library. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a console.writeLine. Data types, which is a list, which I'll show you now. Data types is a list in my class library right here. It's a list which contains these three strings: string, int, and void, respectively. Where am I? Yeah. So that's my list. And since it's a list, I can access the elements by index. So I'm going to go ahead and access the first element, which I believe is string. And I'm going to write that string onto the console window. And now I'm going to go ahead and boot up my program. And what you should see on my console window is the string value of the first element in my data types list written on the console window. That should be the first thing you see. And this is using the dynamic link library. I'm just going to go ahead and wait for Visual Studio to boot up. Here's my program. I'm just going to click it. It's a bit off screen. I find that sometimes Visual Studio can be a little bit slow, as there's a lot of things for it to process. And as you can see, right here, string.